please welcome Kristin.
Good morning. Oh, good. I'm working. You can hear me. It's early. I got a full disclosure. I'm usually rolling out of bed at this hour. So if I doze off to sleep, somebody nudge me. I promise I'll do the same for you. But we're going to do this. We're going to be like the army this morning because we're going to learn more about mindfulness before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. It's true. It's true. I'm Kristin Fritz. I'm a meditation teacher and a mindfulness coach, but first and foremost, I'm a student. Have been for decades. In fact, I had been a practitioner of mindfulness for years before even realizing there was a word for it. I was seeking a way to be completely present and engaged in my life. Carpe diem was my jam. Seize the day, right? Be here now. Live in the moment. I wanted all those hashtags. Of course, this was back in the 80s, and we used bumper stickers back then. But you get my point. I wanted to learn how to live in the moment, fully awake to my life. And then I discovered this word, this wisdom, this practice that can even help you when it's not so easy to live in the moment, when things honestly can get a little. But this word, this wisdom, this practice called mindfulness really taught me how to do this. Instead of letting so much time just slip through my fingers, I had finally found a way to live in the moment, fully present, no matter what life brought. And then life brought it. Terminal. My dad, who had been a heart patient for more than 20 years, was diagnosed terminal. My family was stunned, and we huddled together for the next 8 months he was expected to live. But he lasted 8 weeks. And then my mom, whose mourning just seemed to suck the life out of her, was also diagnosed terminal. And exactly 3 months to the day after my dad's passing, she succumbed to cancer. And after such a huge hit to our family unit, we then lost my mother-in-law without warning. All of this within a 10-month period. And yet, even through all the horror and the sadness, I found within me a calm amidst that storm. I was able to cope with day after day and month after month of uncertainty and the chaos of navigating a process that has no clear path. All the while, keeping myself together for my 3 young boys who needed their mom at home. I had never been so intimate with death before, and yet I was able to remain present to myself and my experience, present to my family, and present to the dying. It was through this period in my life that I really came to see that mindfulness was the greatest gift that I had ever received or given. And so now what makes my role as a teacher and a guide so meaningful is that I get to go out and share this gift with others. I get to share this gift with people like you who also meet with life's uncertainties. People like you who also want just less stress and more daily happiness, ease, and meaning. I mean, who among you, show of hands, could use a little more support when life's challenges arrive at your door, right? Woohoo! Yeah, so today I want to give you a very practical toolkit for mindfulness that will serve as a solid foundation for you to build on or to enhance an already established practice. So today you're going to get in your toolkit a very concise definition of exactly what mindfulness is. You're going to get a clear understanding of how mindfulness can enhance your life both at home and at work, both in good times and in bad times. You're also going to get some really impactful mindfulness tools so that you can apply mindfulness on a moment's notice. Tools like stop, so that you can shift into a mindful mode in a matter of seconds. And the tool of meditation, so that you can build your mindfulness muscle over time in an accessible way. Your toolkit is designed to be practical and impactful, so you can begin to see results immediately. Plus, you're going to leave the room this morning feeling centered and empowered. Sound like a good way to start the day? Yeah. Awesome, I love it. So, before we get started, I want to just give you a taste of where we're headed. So if you have anything in your hands, I invite you to set them down on the floor or in your lap. And on your next inhale, just find some length in the spine. And on your exhale, let your eyes drift closed or cast your eyes down toward the kneecaps and soften your gaze. And just begin by noticing the breath. Just connecting with the breath wherever you feel it most easily. So this could be the flow of the breath at the nostrils, or the rise and fall of the chest, perhaps the filling and emptying of the belly. Just connect with the breath where you can access it most easily. And just notice yourself breathing without needing to change a thing. Notice your inhales. Notice your exhales. And notice, too, those small pauses between the inhale and the exhale, almost like turning a tiny corner as you transition between the inflow and the outflow. And you can think of this as a 4-part breath. And I invite you to envision the shape of a rectangle. Tracing this 4-part breath, envision your inhale and exhale as the long sides of the rectangle, with those small pauses in between as the short ends of the rectangle. So breathing in, short pause, breathing out, short pause, breathing in. And we'll trace the breath in this shape of the rectangle in silence for just a moment, holding our awareness on this breath breathing you. And on your next exhale, just let go of the vision of the rectangle. Let it fade with the breath. Notice your body seated here in this moment and in this space. And when you're ready, just gently drift the eyes open to arrive fully in this moment. Well, we all just meditated. Was that a first for anyone? No. Yes. I had a feeling. Well, regardless of whether you meditated before or not, you can see that it's really quite simple, but not necessarily easy to do. Did anybody have a hard time keeping their awareness focused on the rectangle of the breath the entire time? Yeah. Simple, but not easy. And we're going to talk about that today. But before we go there, I want to dive into this question. What the heck is mindfulness anyway? So if you were to look up the definition of mindfulness online, you would discover a vast array of definitions that vary in degree of complexity and word count. And this in itself can be really confusing. But if you were to look very closely at these definitions, you would see that they all share a common set of ingredients. So what I want to give you today is a very concise definition of mindfulness. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. So let's say that together. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose. You know, it's ironic to me that as we're growing up, we're constantly told by the adults in our lives to pay attention. Pay attention, Katie. Pay attention. But if you stop and think about it, we're never really given a concrete skill set for how to pay attention. And yet, throughout your day, you're constantly paying attention to something. The question is, to what? So I've been talking for about 10 minutes now. And for the most part, you might have been paying attention to what I was saying, but you also might have had a second here or there where you noticed that your attention had drifted off into places other than this room, thinking about an email that you got late last night that you need to respond to as soon as you get into the office today. Maybe you were thinking, oh, my stomach's grumbling, I should have grabbed that avocado toast before I headed over. My point is, your mind is just constantly pumping out thoughts, and that's okay. That's its natural process. It's in its job description to secrete thoughts the same way that the mouth constantly secretes saliva. But it's surprising to discover how rarely those thoughts are focused on your present moment experience. In fact, studies show that your mind's attention wanders away from the task at hand or the present moment experience 50% of the time. Okay, so who in this room wants to live to be 100? Anyone with me? Yeah. So, Marley, you want to live to be 100? Yeah. Okay, so you can plan on 50 years of your attention being someplace other than your physical body. Sound like good quality of life? She's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, maybe if your attention's off on some white sandy beach with an umbrella drink in its hand, sure, maybe we could have a debate about that, but that's not really the case, is it? So if your mind's attention is not in the same place as your physical body, where is it? Any Back to the Future fans in the house? Yeah, Marty McFly and Doc, time traveling through their own shit show. At least it's in a nice car, right? The DeLorean. Anybody remember the name of the part that Doc installed in his DeLorean? There's always a great response to that. It's so iconic. The flux capacitor, yeah. Doc installed a flux capacitor into his DeLorean, which made it significantly different from any other, because his could travel through time. Your mind's awareness, your attention is like Doc's DeLorean, because it can be here in the present, but it can also travel to the past and the future. Your mind's attention is constantly bouncing back and forth between these three realities of past, present, and future. But unlike Doc's DeLorean, which is fueled by plutonium or trash, depending on the movie. Your DeLorean of awareness is fueled by habits. Now, when we think of habits, we tend to think of things like nail biting, smoking, brushing your teeth. These are obvious habits, and you know that you have them, but you also have a lot of other habits that come in the form of habitual thought patterns that subconsciously rule your life. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's just that a lot of times, these habitual thought patterns don't necessarily serve you because they're hooked. They're hooked on a remembered past, or they're hooked on an imagined future. And with too much time travel, remember, 50%, your attention can start to dwell on all these imperfections of the past, like the things you didn't do, the things you could have done better, the things you did do. And then, in order to protect yourself, you take all these imperfections from the past, you toss them into the future so you can predict any potential future imperfections so you can make sure your butt is covered, you can make sure you do better, and you can make sure that nothing ever goes wrong again. Sound exhausting? Sound familiar? Yeah. But with some heightened awareness and some tools, you can notice when your DeLorean of awareness has taken flight into undesired places, and you can bring it back to the present, back to the reality of here and now, despite what your mind wants to tell you about past events you can't change and future events that haven't even happened. Here in the present, you can connect with what's true right here and right now, and you can use that as a springboard toward a more purposeful attitude and response. So my freshman year in high school, I read a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Anyone familiar with this book? Great book, not an easy read. And Viktor Frankl was a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and a Holocaust survivor. And as a psychiatrist, Frankl not only saw patients before and after his internment, but also while he was inside the camps. And what he came to see as a commonality amongst those who survived was this: you can strip away everything from a person: their home, their family, their freedom. But you can never remove one's freedom to choose their attitude. Even amidst those atrocities, Frankl discovered that those who survived had given themselves the freedom to find meaning through meaningful attitudes. No matter what is going on around you, you have the freedom to choose your attitude. You have the freedom to choose your response. Oh, but our brains are so tricky. They really are. Anybody here ever been accused of being a backseat driver? Okay, so you willing to play with me?
Yes.
Okay, and what's your name? Michelle. Okay. So Michelle, can you describe for me in one word how you were being perceived by the actual driver when you were allegedly driving from the backseat? Unhelpful. Yeah, well, Michelle, guess what? You are a backseat driver, but you're not alone, because we're all backseat drivers up here. But that's not the whole story. Thank you. And Susan Kaiser Greenland, author of The Mindful Child, has a great model to help illustrate this for us. Okay, so check it out. Here's your brain. Now, in the back of your brain, you have a part that is emotional and reactive. Meet your backseat driver. And like Michelle here, it can be a little unhelpful at times. In fact, when your brain isn't well trained to pay attention on purpose, it can be quite the loudmouth, and it kind of likes to run the show. I mean, you know how backseat drivers can be, right? Now, in the front of your brain, you have a part that is your creative problem solver. Now, when it's engaged, you can see clearly that you have a lot of options. In fact, you have a whole buffet of choices. The problem is, when your loudmouth backseat driver gets squawking, it makes it kind of hard to hear your creative problem solver. But the practice of mindfulness actually shifts your brain activity from the backseat to the front so your creative problem solver can do its job. So how do we easily engage our problem solver and get to that buffet of choices? It all starts with noticing. Noticing is that light bulb moment. The light turns on, and you can see clearly. With noticing, you can see where your DeLorean of awareness is, and you can divert it back to the present. When you're in the present, you are truly mindful. When you're mindful, you're connected, you're aware. And it's here that you have the power of choice. It's here that you can start to dismantle any of those thought patterns that don't serve you and start to create and build new ones that do. So we need tools and some practice to help us strengthen our ability to notice where our DeLorean of attention is and where we want it to go from there. So I want to share with you a very simple but potent 4-step mindfulness tool offered to us by Dr. Elisha Goldstein, who adapted it from mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And it's an acronym, and it's called STOP. So our first step in our STOP tool is the S, and I said this was very simple because guess what? The S stands for stop. That's right. S is for stop. S is that light bulb moment. The light turns on and you see where your DeLorean of awareness is. And you remember, I have this tool. This is what we call a pattern interrupt. So you stop and you remember you have this tool, which sets you up to take the next step to T. And T is for take a few breaths. I know the first speaker here at We Mindful talked all about the breath, and the breath, we can say so much about the breath. Breathing is revolutionary, and I know there's going to be a lot more coming out about the breath going forward. It was like we had yoga and then mindfulness. It's like now we're going to be talking a lot more about breathing. So what happens when we stop and we take a few breaths? So when we choose to take a few breaths, or when I tell you breathe, you don't start thinking about a few breaths you took yesterday. You don't think about a few breaths you're going to take this afternoon. You think about this breath right here in this moment that you're currently experiencing, and that leads you to the next. So just noticing the breath, just taking a few breaths, immediately anchors you into the present moment. Now, what happens after that? Just by placing your awareness on the breath, it begins to naturally slow down. Now, when your breath slows down, your heart rate slows down. And when your heart rate slows down, your brain waves slow, and you start to shift from that back seat to the front. And you probably felt that calming effect in our earlier practice when we just breathed. So it starts to create this shift so that now we're well equipped to take our next step to O. And O is for observe. I like to think of the O in observe as this giant porthole window where we can peer through and we can see how things really are for us in this moment. So this is like taking an inventory of what our present state is. So I like to use this model of a triangle to check in with how we are. How is my mental state? What thoughts are present? How is my emotional state? What feelings are present? And how is my physical state? What body sensations are present? Is there a knot in my stomach? Is my heart racing? Now, this is just an opportunity for us to take an inventory. This isn't an invitation for us to get caught up in all those things again. So I like to think of this as like, you're opening up the medicine cabinet and you're just checking in to see what's in there. You're just making a list. Okay, let's see. I see I've got some Stridex, some deodorant, and some toothpaste. I'm just checking in, just seeing what's present. I'm not taking out the product and reading the fine print and sampling it. No, I'm not getting caught up in it. I'm just taking an inventory. And all of this gives us very good intel to take the next step, to P. And P is for proceed. There we go. So now we are well equipped to proceed with purpose. We've stopped. We've created that pattern interrupt. We've taken a few breaths, calming our physiology and shifting from the back seat to the front. We've observed, we've checked in to see how things are for us in this moment, and we've gotten some good intel. So now we can respond with wisdom rather than react from habit as we might have done previously. So this is where I like to say, now you get to choose your response. You get to make a conscious, informed choice that's aligned with who you really want to be and aligned with what you really want. So mindfulness is giving you this power of choice. And by the way, let me just say that your stop tool, this is very simple so that you can easily remember it on a moment's notice. If it's overcomplicated, we're going to be like, wait, what's the next step? But yeah, stop. Pretty simple, right? And this tool can be used in any situation. It can be used for some hairy, complicated challenge, like navigating the illness of a loved one. It can be used for some small annoyance, like standing in line at the grocery store and realizing you chose the slow line. Your stop tool can also be good for when you're having a good time. So you might be at like a great community event and like, this is so awesome, where's this been all my life? And you can have this moment, this light bulb moment where you go, oh yeah, I also have a tool for savoring. There's so much great science coming out about savoring, gratitude, appreciation, and how good that is for our physiology. When we savor, when we express gratitude and we really soak it up, dial it up, we create or we enhance the production of DHEA in our body that is what they call the vitality hormone, the anti-aging hormone. Who doesn't want more of that? So you can be in the midst of a great event and you can go, oh my gosh, I have a tool for savoring. I want to crank up the production of that anti-aging hormone. Let's do it. So you're going to take a few breaths. You're going to breathe it all in. You're going to anchor yourself in the present moment. Breathe in all the goodness. You're going to observe, how does this feel in my body? Yes, and look at who all is around and all this amazing community and great snacks and drinks, and this is just amazing. And now you might proceed with a little more purpose. You might express a little more gratitude for those who made it possible. You might make some new connections, extend yourself a little more than you would have otherwise. You get to choose. So stop is a great tool for soaking up the goodness, too. Any situation. And this is what mindfulness does for us. It gives us this power of choice. And it all starts with noticing, remember? It all starts with noticing. Without noticing, we can't get to the goodies. We can't get to the buffet of choices. We can't be so purposeful. So noticing really is your doorway toward being a more mindful person. Now, the tool and practice of meditation is like taking your noticing muscle to the gym. So let's say you want to have like really cut biceps for the summer. So you go to the gym on June 1, you get in a good workout. And then do you call it good for the season? No. You have to go several times a week, and eventually over time you start to realize, hey, it's starting to work. So the same is true of meditation. It takes a consistent practice over time to see results. But unlike going to the gym, meditation does not have to take a lot of time. And so I like to tell my clients that an ongoing practice of 5 days a week, 5 minutes a day, is a great foundation. You can always add more time later, but we're not just practicing meditation here, we're also practicing consistency. I call it my 5x5 rule. 5 days a week, 5 minutes a day, and as I always say, there's no better time to practice meditation than right here and right now. So let's do that. So I invite you once again to set your things on the floor or comfortably in your lap. And on your next inhale, just find some length in the spine. And on your exhale, drift the eyes closed or cast your eyes down toward the kneecaps and soften your gaze. And just begin by placing your attention on the breath. Just noticing the breath. Perhaps it's the same as before. Perhaps it's changed. No matter. Just a gentle noticing, and allow your awareness to zero in on the experience of the breath flowing in and out at the nostrils. Getting uber curious about the experience of the breath flowing in and out. Seeing if you can tune in onto some temperature. Is it warm or cool? Is it coarse or smooth? Deep or shallow? Just noticing all the subtleties of this breath here at the nostrils. And invite your awareness to drift down to the core of your chest. And notice yourself breathing here at the chest. Notice the subtleties of the body. Perhaps sensing into the rise and fall of your chest as you breathe. Maybe a subtle contraction and expansion of your shoulders. Just bringing a sense of heightened curiosity to examine the breath here at the chest. Breathing in and breathing out. And invite your awareness now to drift down to the core of the belly. And bringing a heightened sense of curiosity to the experience of breathing at the belly. Noticing whenever your mind's attention wanders off, and bringing it back to this breath. As you breathe in and breathe out here at the belly. And now notice your entire body breathing. Just expanding your awareness gently to encompass the entire body. Noticing with curiosity the experience of this breath breathing you. This breath that has been with you since you drew your first breath. And will be with you until you draw your last. Always here for you. Always a tool to come back to whenever you need a moment of presence, of calm, and on your next exhale, just let that go. Taking a moment to observe, check in. Lingering in this silence and this stillness that you've cultivated in just a matter of moments. And when you're ready, just gently drift the eyes open to arrive fully in this moment. Okay, so as with before, did anybody have a hard time holding their attention, their focus on the breath? Yeah. And who among you had that moment where you went, oh crap, I was supposed to be paying attention to the breath? Anyone? Yes. That's your moment of noticing. That's, you realized that your attention had wandered away from the task at hand, which was to pay attention to the breath. The light bulb went on and you noticed. That is like doing one bicep curl with your noticing muscle. And guess what? Your attention will wander off again, and it'll wander off again, and it'll wander off again, and you'll bring it back again, again, again. And what happens to a muscle when it gets a good workout? It gets stronger, right? That's the practice. Just noticing when your awareness has wandered off and bringing it back. That's all it is. Simple, but not easy to do. And that's why we practice. And I like to remind people that meditation is a practice. It's not a perfection. So many people are like, oh, I'm not good at it. It doesn't work for me. It's a practice, not a perfection. There's no being good in meditation. There's just showing up. Remember my 5x5 rule. 5 days a week, 5 minutes a day. It's far better for you than once a week for 25 minutes because you're practicing consistency. And consistency is the key toward a meditation practice that yields results. So I have one question for you guys, and then we'll go into questions for me. Anybody here brush their teeth? Show of hands. If your neighbor's hand isn't up, you need to nudge them. They've fallen asleep. Yeah, we already have a built-in opportunity to practice mindfulness. Once, twice, 3 times a day. And all you have to do, seriously, all you have to do is just brush your teeth. Be fully present with the experience. Notice the smell of the toothpaste. Is it peppermint, spearmint, bubblegum? Notice the taste, the flavor, the scent. Notice how the paste transforms from a paste into a foamy lather. Notice the bristles of the brush on your teeth and on your tongue. And notice, too, when your attention travels off into places other than the bathroom, and when you do, just gently bring it back to the experience of brushing your teeth. This is a great mini mindfulness practice that you already have consistency built in. So share this with your roommate, your partner, get them in on the game, and practice mindful brushing together, at least once a day. So we have a little piece of time for questions. So I welcome any of your questions about meditation, mindfulness. I'll do my best to answer them. And if no questions, we can always, I'd love to hear your comments, your insights. That's allowed too. And by the way, we're passing around these postcards, which is a nice handy-dandy little tool for you to take home that outlines the stop tools. So you can put this on your refrigerator, on your desk. I actually had a client who kept this on her nightstand, and every morning she would just wake up and she'd review it, reminding herself that she has this tool in her back pocket until it became more rote memory. And we'll have extras on the table, so I encourage you to take extras. If you have a loved one at home who could do a little more stopping, you can share this great handy-dandy tool with them. So, any questions? Yeah, over here. And Megan, do we want the mic? Does that help?
Hello, I'm Shay, and I was wondering when you do the observe section, if you have any tips for like deciphering emotions, because I feel like I only have like happy and sad and angry and not much else, and it's kind of hard to figure out how I'm actually feeling.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what we tend to notice first are those top-level emotions that we're super familiar with, or that are like the squeakiest wheel. You know, the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. So a lot of times when something happens, that's the emotion we notice first, and we don't even realize there's all these other subtle layers underneath. And I would encourage you not to get too caught up in like what the labels are of those emotions, but rather, how does that feel to you? How is it presenting? Is there a correlation with where you're feeling that feeling in your body? Is it something that you've noticed over a period of time, and maybe giving your own language to it, like, this feels like pink fluffy cloud, or this feels like, you know, metal spikes, or whatever works for you, so that you can start to give it your own language and start to see patterns and also where it resides in the body. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shay. Any other questions? Comments? Revelations? Yeah, I think the mic's coming. Megan has her running shoes on.
Hi, Kristin. My name is Jana.
Hi.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared.
Thank you.
Amanda, who's actually one of the ladies who started Mindful Mornings, came to speak at my work, and that's how I learned about this. And she also recommended the toothbrushing thing as a daily mindfulness practice.
Awesome.
The other thing she recommended in addition to that is trying brushing with your opposite hand.
Ooh.
And I've been doing that ever since she said that, actually, and it really helps you actually focus on what you're doing.
I bet. That's a great tip. I haven't heard that. Thank you for sharing. And so that's working for you, and are you doing that on a consistent basis?
Actually, I should probably switch back to the right hand now. Yeah, but it definitely helps you pay attention to what you're doing.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Anything else? Any other tips, queries? Yeah, Michelle, up here again.
Where do you travel every year with your spiritual mentor?
We have typically India, that's kind of the top level location, different parts, north, south. But we've also gone to Kuala Lumpur for Thaipusam, which is a Hindu festival, super intense. And Sri Lanka. We've been to Sri Lanka a couple times, yeah. So it's wonderful. And if you're curious, he does these annual spiritual adventures. A lot of you in this room know me, and so you've heard me talk about it. I'd be happy to share more information with you and his name's Dandapani, but you're not going to spell it right, so come see me and I can tell you about his website and you can check out his spiritual adventures. It would be amazing to have a We Mindful spiritual adventure. So yeah, thanks. Anything else? Burning questions? Opportunity to speak? Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Leah, and the question that's coming up is, so you named patterns. You know, when as we observe, we notice, sometimes we start to see patterns. And I'm really fascinated by this because our patterns are unique to us. They're like totally customizable, and there's an awareness that happens to the patterns as well as what's in the moment. So I'm just curious, like what would you share about when those patterns become, we're not just aware of what's present in the moment, but become more aware of our own patterns. How to work with those to help kind of open up the space of the presence that we really get to move and act from.
So maybe heightened awareness around those patterns that you want to start to dismantle?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think you bring up a really good point about noticing, like just even, that's the first step, just noticing, right? That's always the first step toward anything transformational. So just starting to notice those patterns, like maybe you're like, oh my gosh, whenever A happens, I do B. B does not serve me. I don't want to do B anymore. Help me not do B anymore. I would rather do anything other than B. I'll do C, D, E, F, G. Give it to me. I need to know. And so when we start to notice, okay, I need an alternative plan to B. When we're not in the thick of it, we can strategize for ourselves. And we can go, okay, obviously I'm not in my backseat driver right now because I'm not in the midst of this, habitual pattern. So I'm going to do some strategizing from my problem solver about what might be an alternative plan. What could C be? What could D be? What could E be? What are some alternatives? What's that buffet of choices other than B? I don't want to do B anymore. So then you can do some strategizing for yourself so that next time A happens and you start to see your DeLorean of awareness heading to B, you have a tool, a stop tool. You stop, you see that A has happened, you're heading toward B, stop, take a few breaths, observe, get some more good intel, and then you can go, and I have a strategy for this because I thought about it before. So now I'm going to employ plan C. Does it work 100% of the time? No, because what you're doing is you're creating new neural patterns, right? So the journey from A to B is as deep as the Oregon ruts that are still out there by Pendleton or wherever they are. I mean, they're still there, right? Because they've been well traveled, and that's the deal with our neural patterns, our habitual thought patterns. So to create a new neural pattern, it takes a little bit of work. But if you don't have clarity of strategy, you're just going to be in the thick of it, and it's hard. Some things are easier. Some small things are easier, like being in the slow line at the grocery store, and you're like, and then you go, wait, I'm just going to see if this tool works. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a few breaths. I'm going to check in, and hey, maybe I'll talk to this neighbor next to me. I can't do anything about it, so maybe I'll get to know my neighbor. So that's easy. But when you're in the thick of something that is deeply rooted, it's like, oh, let's see, I forgot. I had that other strategy. Next time it happens, I'm going to try harder to remember. And next time you probably will. It's just heightening your awareness and your intention around that and equipping yourself with a strategy beforehand when you're not in the thick of it. And then you can start to create, remember, we're coming back to the present moment. You can start to create that new pattern. And then over time, you've done it a few times, it starts to become habit. I started using those reusable grocery bags, and I had them all. They were all like in my driver's side of the car. Forgot them. Every time I'd be at the checkout line, I'd be like, oh, I have those in the car, dang it, okay. And I get in the car and I go, okay, guys, next time you're coming with me. Took me several times, but then eventually I'd remember on occasion. And now it's like a no-brainer. So it's just, having that strategy, that intention, and then just following through again and again and again, and you build that muscle. Helpful? Okay, great. Good luck. Anything else? I think we got to wrap it up probably, huh?
Yeah.
So just real quick, to wrap things up, I just want to remind you that no matter what is going on around you, you have an amazing capacity to master your response. And all it takes is a commitment to take consistent action in small ways. And your toolkit is a great way to help you do that. When you are present in any moment, you are truly living mindfully. And as you become more mindful, you start to see yourself evolving. You start to see yourself receiving life more fully. And you start to know yourself more authentically. You become a master of everything that flows to you and through you. None of us are ever done with this work. None of us ever get to check the 24/7 mindful box and be done with it. No, it's how you show up moment by moment by moment that ultimately makes up the fabric of your life. I want to thank you guys for showing up this morning, for leaning in with curiosity. And I want to leave you with these words by Viktor Frankl. And I know these words have been uttered at We Mindful before, but I think they're so appropriate to this journey, and they're worth repeating. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Carpe diem, everybody. Thank you so much.